The morning sun gently touched the small window of a modest home in Da Nang, Vietnam. Inside, Lin stood silently beside a white wooden cradle, empty, untouched, waiting. Dust had begun to settle on the soft blanket she once folded with so much love and hope. She whispered to herself, "Maybe next year, maybe God will bless us next year." But even her own voice trembled, like she didn't believe those words anymore. Her husband, Min, was sitting at the breakfast table, scrolling through his phone. He barely looked up when she placed his coffee in front of him. "Thanks," he muttered, without meeting her eyes. Lynn sat opposite him, forcing a small smile. "I got an appointment next week with a new doctor in Hanoi. They say he's helped many women." Min interrupted sharply. "Lynn, we've been through this so many times. It's been 5 years. Maybe we should just accept that it's not meant to be." Her heart sank. "But I still believe." Min snapped, standing up. "Believe in what?" "That someday it will just happen like magic." His voice cracked with frustration, but behind that anger was pain. Pain that neither of them knew how to heal. Lynn lowered her head, tears filling her eyes. "You promised you'd never give up on me." Min turned away, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't give up on you, Lynn. I gave up on false hope." That night, the house was silent. Lynn sat alone in the dark living room, staring at the cradle again. The wind outside brushed the curtains softly, as if trying to comfort her. On the small shelf nearby sat a photograph. Lynn and Min on their wedding day, smiling brightly, unaware of the storms that would come. She touched the frame gently and whispered, "We were supposed to be a family." Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, and deep down, Lynn could feel something in her life was about to change forever. The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days. It fell against the windows like the sky itself was crying for her. Lynn sat on the sofa, staring at the front door, waiting for Min to come home from work, but something inside her told her tonight would be different. When the door finally opened, Min stepped in quietly, his shirt damp from the rain. He didn't remove his shoes, didn't look at her. He just went straight to the bedroom. Lynn followed him, her voice trembling. "Min, what's wrong? You've been so distant lately. Please talk to me." He sighed deeply, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Lynn, I've been thinking a lot. About us. About the future." Her hands froze midair. "The future? What do you mean?" Min's eyes were tired, as if he had cried silently long before this moment. "I met someone," he finally said, his voice barely audible. For a second, Lynn didn't understand. The words didn't register. She blinked, trying to make sense of what she just heard. "You what?" "I didn't mean for it to happen," he continued. "Her name is Mai. She works at the office. She's kind, and she's pregnant." The world around Lynn went completely still, her breath caught in her chest, her legs shaking beneath her. She wanted to scream, to throw something, to run, but she couldn't move. Her voice cracked. "She's pregnant." Min lowered his head. "I never wanted to hurt you, Lynn, but I can't live like this anymore. I want a family, and she can give me that." Lynn's tears streamed freely now. "So you're leaving me because I can't give you a child? After everything we've been through?" He didn't reply. The silence was heavier than any words could be. He picked up a small suitcase from under the bed. Already packed. That's when Lynn realized he had made this decision long before tonight. As he walked toward the door, Lynn whispered through her sobs, "You're not just leaving your wife, Min. You're leaving the woman who would have given you everything, even if she had nothing left." He stopped for a moment at the doorway, his back to her. Then, without turning around, he said softly, "Goodbye, Lynn." The door closed behind him. Lynn collapsed to the floor, the sound of the rain mixing with her cries. In that moment, her world ended, or so she thought. But fate had other plans waiting, ones that would soon shock everyone who had turned their back on her. Days turned into weeks. But for Lynn, time had stopped the moment Min walked away. His clothes were gone, his toothbrush missing, his scent faded from the house. But his absence screamed in every corner. Every morning, Lynn still made 2 cups of coffee out of habit, only to pour one down the sink moments later. She still arranged 2 plates on the table, though no one came to share her meal. The silence had become her only companion. But the outside world was far from silent. Neighbors whispered. When she passed by, some pitied her, others judged her. Poor Lynn, they said, her husband left because she couldn't have children. She must have done something wrong. Another voice added. Each word felt like a knife. She smiled politely, but her eyes told the truth. She was breaking inside. One afternoon, she visited her mother's small home in the countryside. Her mother, Madame Hoa, held her tightly, saying nothing, just the warmth of a mother's arms that spoke louder than words. "My daughter," Hoa finally said softly, "sometimes God closes one door because he wants you to find another one. The one meant only for you." "But why me, mother?" Lynn whispered. "I prayed. I hoped. I never hurt anyone. Why can't I be like other women?" Hoa brushed a tear from her cheek. "Because maybe your story is not about having a child. Maybe it's about becoming someone strong enough to help others." That night, Lynn sat under the stars outside her mother's house. The air was cool, filled with the scent of wet soil and blooming jasmine. For the first time in months, she closed her eyes and let the tears fall freely. Not out of pain this time, but out of surrender. As she looked up at the night sky, she whispered to herself, "Maybe this isn't the end of my story. Maybe it's the beginning." The next morning, she packed a small bag and decided to return to the city. She didn't know what awaited her there, but deep down, a quiet fire had started to burn again in her heart. Lynn didn't realize it yet, but the path she was about to take would lead her towards something that would change her life forever and shock everyone who once pitied her. When Lynn returned to the city, everything felt different. The same streets that once reminded her of sadness now seemed quieter, almost inviting her to start again. She rented a small room above a flower shop near the Han River. The rent was modest, the room tiny, but for the first time in a long while, it was hers. Each morning, the fragrance of fresh lilies and roses filled the air. The shop owner, Mrs. Lon, a kind elderly woman with gentle eyes, noticed Lynn's calm but sad nature. "You have soft hands," Mrs. Lon said one morning, watching Lynn help arrange bouquets. "Would you like to work here part-time? Flowers have a way of healing broken hearts." Lynn smiled faintly. "Maybe that's exactly what I need." And so, she began working at the flower shop. Every petal she touched, every bouquet she tied, felt like she was slowly stitching her own heart back together. Days passed, and people began to notice her kindness. She listened to customer stories about love, loss, and hope. In helping them, she started to heal herself. One afternoon, a man entered the shop carrying a small wooden box. He was in his mid-30s, wearing a plain shirt, his eyes warm but filled with quiet sadness. "Excuse me," he said softly. "I need some flowers for my daughter's grave. Today would have been her birthday." Lynn froze for a moment, then nodded gently. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said, her voice trembling. "Let me make something special for her." As she prepared the bouquet, white daisies and yellow tulips, the man watched silently. When she handed it to him, he smiled faintly. "You have a kind soul," he said. "Most people don't speak to me with such warmth anymore." Lynn simply replied, "Pain recognizes pain." He hesitated, then introduced himself. "I'm On." From that day on visited the shop often, sometimes for flowers, sometimes just to talk. Their conversations were gentle, healing. Two broken hearts, slowly finding comfort in each other's presence. But destiny wasn't done with Lynn yet. A few weeks later, a small baby was left abandoned outside the shop's doorstep, wrapped in a thin pink blanket, crying softly in the morning mist. Mrs. Lon gasped. "Who would leave a baby here?" Lynn's hands trembled as she lifted the child carefully into her arms. As the baby quieted, resting against her chest, Lynn felt something she hadn't felt in years, an instant, powerful connection. She looked into the baby's tiny face, tears filling her eyes. "I don't know who you are," she whispered, "but maybe you're the reason I was meant to stay." And from that moment, Lynn's life took a turn no one could have imagined, a turn that would soon shock everyone, including the man who once left her. The baby was barely a few months old, small, fragile, and shivering when Lynn first held her. Mrs. Lon quickly brought a warm blanket while Lynn rocked the little one gently, whispering, "It's okay. You're safe now, little one." They called the police, and soon an officer arrived to take a report. Someone must have abandoned her early this morning, the officer said sadly. We'll take her to social services if no one comes forward in a few hours. Lynn looked down at the baby in her arms, her heart aching. She had dreamed of this moment for years, holding a child, even if not her own. The thought of handing her over so soon made her chest tighten painfully. Mrs. Lon noticed the look on Lynn's face and said softly, "Sometimes fate brings souls together in strange ways, my dear. Maybe she came to you for a reason." When the officer left, Lynn couldn't stop thinking about the baby. That night, she stayed awake, cradling the child, feeding her warm milk that Mrs. Lon had prepared. The baby's small hand wrapped around Lynn's finger, and in that moment, something inside Lynn healed, something that had been broken for years. At BY morning, no one had come to claim the child. The officer returned, saying, "We can take her now." But Lynn hesitated. "Please, may I take care of her until you find her parents? I'll do everything properly." After a long pause, the officer agreed to let Lynn act as a temporary guardian, under supervision. Days turned into weeks. Lynn named the baby Hope, "because that's what she brought into my life," she told Mrs. Lon one afternoon as she played with the child near the flowers. The man who often visited the shop also grew attached to Hope. He'd stop by to bring milk or toys, smiling as the baby giggled. "She likes you," Lynn said one day, laughing softly. "She likes you more," he replied warmly. "You look like a mother when you hold her." Lynn's smile faded for a moment. "I was never meant to be a mother." On looked at her gently. "Maybe not by blood, but the heart knows differently." Those words stayed with her point one evening. As Lynn tucked Hope into a small crib beside her bed, she whispered, "You came into my life when everything was dark. Maybe you're my miracle." But destiny had one more twist. The next morning, a black car stopped outside the flower shop. A well-dressed woman stepped out, holding a photo of the same baby. Her voice was firm but emotional. "I've been looking everywhere for her." Lynn froze, her heart sinking. Her hands trembled as she held Hope closer, realizing that the child who had given her life meaning might not be hers to keep. The woman who stepped out of the black car was elegant, with expensive clothes and tired eyes. She looked like someone who had cried too much but refused to show it. Lynn held baby Hope protectively as Mrs. Lon came forward. "Can we help you?" she asked gently. The woman nodded, showing a photograph. It was clearly the same baby, wrapped in the same pink blanket. "This is my daughter," the woman said in a trembling voice. "She went missing 2 weeks ago. Someone took her from the hospital." Lynn's heart stopped. "The hospital?" she whispered. "But she was left here alone." Tears filled the woman's eyes. "I was in the maternity ward, recovering from surgery. When I woke up, my baby was gone. The police have been searching ever since." Mrs. Lon looked at Lynn sadly. "Oh, dear." The woman introduced herself as Myung Win, wife of a wealthy businessman in the city. She showed hospital documents and identification. Everything was real. Lynn's hand shook as she realized the truth. The baby she had come to love deeply belonged to someone else. Still, something felt strange. Why would someone take her and leave her here? Lynn asked quietly. Maya hesitated. "The police think it was a kidnapping gone wrong. Someone tried to demand ransom, but panicked and left her." Lynn stared at baby Hope, or rather, baby Mai, sleeping peacefully in her arms. "I took care of her," Lynn whispered, voice breaking. "She's healthy, happy she saved me." Maya's eyes softened. "Then I owe you everything. I thought I had lost her forever." When the police confirmed Maya's story, Lynn had no choice but to hand the baby over. Her heart shattered as she kissed the child's forehead one last time. "You'll never know me," she whispered, tears falling onto the baby's tiny hands, "but I'll always remember you." After Maya left, Lynn collapsed to her knees, sobbing. Mrs. Lon hugged her tightly, whispering, "Sometimes love means letting go, my dear. But I know, fate isn't done with you yet." Days passed, and Lynn returned to her quiet life at the flower shop. Her eyes were dull again, her laughter gone. One evening, On came by with concern on his face. "I heard about the baby," he said softly. "I'm sorry." Lynn forced a smile. "I should be happy she's safe. But my heart feels empty again." On paused before saying, You gave that child a reason to live, and she gave you a reason to start again. Maybe that was destiny's plan. Lynn nodded silently. But something unexpected happened a week later. The letter arrived at the flower shop. Written in neat handwriting, IT was from Maya and Win. Dear Lynn, I've thought about you every day since I took my daughter home. She wouldn't stop crying the first night until she heard your name. I realized something then. She remembers you that I would like to meet again. Not as strangers, but as mothers who saved each other in different ways. Lynn's hands trembled as she read the letter. She looked out the window at the quiet street, tears in her eyes. Maybe fate wasn't closing a door. Maybe it was opening a new one. A week after receiving Maya's letter, Lynn finally gathered the courage to visit the address written at the bottom, a beautiful white villa on the edge of the city. Her heart pounded as she stood before the gate, clutching a small bouquet of lilies, the same kind of flowers that had once helped her through the darkest days. When the door opened, Maya greeted her warmly. She looked different now, softer, more at peace. Lynn, she said gently, I'm so glad you came. Inside the house, everything was quiet except for the soft cooing of baby Mai, who was lying on a blanket near the window. The moment Lynn entered, the baby's eyes lit up. She stretched her tiny arms toward Lynn, giggling for the first time since being home. Maya smiled through tears. You see, she remembers you. Lynn knelt beside the baby, holding her small hand, her heart aching with both love and relief. She looks healthy, Lynn said softly. You're taking good care of her. Maya nodded, then hesitated. There's something I need to tell you. Something that might shock you. Lynn looked up, confused. Maya took a deep breath. The day you told me your name, Lynn Tran, it sounded familiar. My husband once told me about a woman by that name. A woman he deeply regretted hurting. Ling Foda. What did you just say? Maya's voice trembled. My husband's name is Min Tran. The room fell silent. Lynn's face turned pale. That's my ex-husband's name, she whispered. Maya nodded slowly. I know. I didn't believe it at first either. But when I showed him your photo, he broke down. He told me everything. About how he left you because the doctors said you couldn't have children, and how he's hated himself for it ever since. Lynn felt dizzy, her heart racing. He never told me he remarried. He thought you moved on, Maya said quietly. But fate, it brought us together, didn't it? You saved the very child that I, his new wife, brought into the world. Lynn's eyes filled with tears. The realization hit her like a wave. The baby she had loved, the one who had healed her broken heart, was the daughter of the man who had once abandoned her. Maya continued softly. Min wanted to come here today, but I asked him not to. I needed to speak to you first. He knows he can't undo the past, but he wants to make things right. Lynn sat silently, her mind spinning. She looked down at baby Mai, who was smiling up at her, innocent, pure, unaware of the tangled fate that tied them all together. Maya reached out and touched Lynn's hand. I don't want us to be enemies. You loved my daughter when no one else was there. You gave her life. I owe you everything. Tears streamed down Lynn's cheeks. I don't hate him anymore, she whispered. But maybe this was destiny's way of showing me. Love can come full circle in ways we'll never understand. The baby giggled again, as if agreeing. Outside, the afternoon sunlight poured through the window, bathing the three of them in a soft, golden glow, like a quiet blessing from the universe itself. That evening, Lynn sat in the garden behind Maya's house, holding a cup of tea. The air was calm, scented with jasmine and roses, flowers she had once arranged daily at the shop. She watched little baby Mai sleeping peacefully in a stroller nearby, her tiny chest rising and falling gently. For the first time in years, Lynn didn't feel anger, only stillness. Soon, the sound of footsteps approached. When she looked up, Min, her ex-husband, stood a few feet away, eyes filled with guilt and hesitation. He looked older, tired, but the sadness in his face told a story Lynn already understood. Lynn, he said softly, I didn't think you'd want to see me. Lynn took a deep breath. I didn't think I would either. They stood in silence for a moment. The years between them hung heavy, full of pain, regret, and unspoken words. I was a coward, Min began, voice breaking. I left when you needed me most. I couldn't face the thought of a life without children. And now I realize I lost more than I'll ever find again. Lynn's eyes filled with quiet tears, but her voice was steady. You hurt me deeply, Min, but the pain taught me strength. If you hadn't left, I might never have found who I really am. He nodded, eyes wet. When Maya told me it was you who found our daughter, I couldn't believe it. Of all the people in this city, it was you. That's how fate works, Lynn whispered. It brings us back to the truth, no matter how far we run. Maya joined them, placing a gentle hand on Lynn's shoulder. We can't change the past, but we can honor it. You saved our child. You saved us. Lynn looked at both of them, not as enemies, but as two souls who had taken different paths to the same place. I don't hate you, she said finally. I forgave you long ago. I just didn't know it yet. Tears slipped down Maya's face. Then maybe this is the second chance we all needed. Lynn smiled softly. Not a second chance at love, but a second chance at peace. They sat together for a while, watching the sunset paint the sky in gold and pink. Baby Mai stirred, opening her eyes, and reached out her little hand toward Lynn. Lynn kissed the baby's fingers gently. Goodbye, my little hope, she whispered. You were never really mine, but you'll always be my miracle. Months later, Lynn continued working at the flower shop. She started a small foundation helping abandoned children, naming it Hope's Garden. Every bouquet sold went towards supporting children in need. Sometimes, Maya and Min visited with baby Mai, who always ran to Lynn first, laughing, calling her Annie Lynn. Each visit reminded Lynn that love doesn't always end. It simply changes form. And on one peaceful evening, as Lynn closed the flower shop and looked at the setting sun, she whispered to herself, life took everything from me once, but gave me back something greater, forgiveness, faith, and the strength to bloom again. The camera could fade out there. Lynn standing among her flowers, smiling softly. The woman who once lost everything, but ended up finding herself.